Hi, Mick. Good morning.
Okay, never mind. Now I'm unmuted. So now I'll say, good morning, Prakash.
Yes, thank you. I can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay.
Zoom starts muted, I think, or whatever. So,
Yes, Zoom starts muted. Yes. Yeah.
Hello.
Morning, Marcus. Probably not morning to you, but how are you?
Thanks. Pretty good. How are you?
Good.
Nice. Yeah, in fact, it's the afternoon. It's 5 p.m.
Okay. Wow.
Marcus.
Hey, Mick.
Are we waiting for anybody else? Prakash, what do we have anything specifically on the agenda? I think
There isn't anything specific on the agenda. Let me share my screen, but I have a couple of questions which I
okay.
think I could
I
discuss
have
here.
Okay, then I'd like to put two things on. One is just again, I don't know if Bruno will be here, but we should at least start the conversation about how to do decap attestation.
Oh, yeah, that is a big
As
thing. Yes.
we're running out of time for EPID.
Yes.
So that's number one. I think two is just some general questions about how to do the getting started contract and how to do the documentation pieces for it.
Okay.
So, and then I think three is what's status of identity dev branch, the Hugging Face dev branch, and the MedPerf dev branch.
Yes. Yeah. Can I say almost already? And discuss to be discussed. And then, yeah. Walk through. Um, okay. I have one. Okay, so I think you did all of this. I have one which is that what does
Prakash,
it
could you
take?
post the notes link in the chat, please?
Oh, yes,
Sorry,
absolutely.
you have one.
I'm just trying to see where is the chat for this. I just did it. Yeah, so it's just a very minor thing. Just wondering how do we update this presentation over here that's still pointing to something old? Because I was talking to Hassan and he was asking me if I could send him the slides, the updated PDO slides and Venny slides. Venny slides, I know we need to do some more legal checking, but I thought the other slides, I thought you said they were public, but it maybe the slide formatting has to be changed.
For which ones?
The one that typically have the Kansas public meeting PDO, but because I think the slide deck still says Intel confidential or something.
So I have the NAR to pull together a slide deck that does not have the Intel Confidential markings on it.
Yeah,
That's
so yeah, so we need
And
to,
by the way, it's not really a problem. That's just a formatting issue because everything
I
that's
see.
there is
So,
public.
but otherwise, are you saying that that
public, right?
slide
So,
deck is approved for public use?
yeah.
Okay, and similarly, so if that's the case, I can push a PR after I change the Intel confidential. If that's all that has to be done,
Okay.
I can.
Are you pushing? Are you telling me that you're putting the slide deck in the repository?
Yes, I'll just replace the one that's here with the newer one.
Okay. Are you sharing something on your screen? Because I'm not seeing it. Maybe.
Oh, you're not seeing my
never mind.
screen?
Never mind. I got it.
Are you seeing my screen? Like, is everybody else seeing my screen, or is it
Yes.
not?
But
Okay.
I thought that. Okay. Yes, I will get all of that information for you. I'll get it all pulled together for you.
Yeah, that's one. And the other thing is, yeah. So the other thing is, I would also probably make a PR with our like earlier Intel innovation poster and add it to the same repo somewhere. Anyway, that was also approved for public consumption, and we don't have it published anywhere because innovation website doesn't carry it. Is there any objection to that?
I don't.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That's fine.
Okay, so let's go back. Bruno is here. Okay, so do you like to start from the first one, decap?
Yeah. So Bruno, do you want to talk about a little bit about and Marcus, this is relevant to you because FPC will need it. But let me start with the question, Marcus. What are the requirements for attestation for FPC? We should certainly try to solve this one time for both projects.
Yes. So I think a couple of days ago, there was some guy creating an issue in the FPC repository asking about the decap support. And I basically, I don't know if that happened, but I referred him to the video project explaining that we are sharing the crypto library, which basically handles the attestation. And basically had to tell him that currently we do not support decap at this point. So therefore, I absolutely think it would make sense to bring decap into the place since Epit is sunsetting. One other thing, I mean, I think I discussed this with Bruno in the past. I mean, we now have for FPC Go chain code support by using Ego. And Ego builds on top of, is it Open Enclave? That framework from Microsoft, I believe.
Yeah.
And they only have decap support. And I think we were kind of brainstorming, ideally what we could do is, I mean, having something in a nice generic way that we could have a little library which understands the decap attestation produced by Open Enclave and the SGX SDK, if that's possible at all. And then basically integrate everything in our nice attestation abstraction library. So we could essentially then also inside our attestation verification component, I mean, just pass this attestation blob to the verification part, and then it will figure out, okay, this uses, I don't know, FGX SDK decap or uses the Open Enclave decap or Epit if that's still somewhere used. that was a little bit the idea we had.
Okay, I think that's a great objective, but so let me back up. There are a couple of things that we need to make sure we're aware of. One is with DCAP, you're going to need to also install a set of services to go
Right.
along at a minimum. So that's number one. Number two question is Bruno's got some, I'll say interesting code. It looks like it actually works. Bruno, does it work? It's too early in the morning for me to provoke Bruno.
Yeah. The code works for ITA.
For ITA, and that's where I was going with it. Is so.
Wait, what is ATA?
Well, okay, this is where I was going. Is we have 3 different ways to support DCAP. Number one is we can support native DCAP and do our own implementation using the SDK libraries for it, which from the looks of it is not all that hard or all that different from what we're doing right now. You do have to have the services in place. There's a bunch of additional configuration that has to be done, but it doesn't look horrible. Okay. And that's Mick saying this from the outside, looking at the lines of code that people have written for it, and it doesn't look like it's all that horrible. So that's native DCAP support. Second option is to use Intel Trust Authority, which is ITA that Bruno was talking about, which does all of the wrapping for all the rest of the stuff for you. And the amount of code that you need to have is relatively small, but you do have to process their token formats. So that becomes an abstract format. The third approach is to go with the Microsoft, the Azure, what is it?
MAA.
MAA, thank you. I always do MSS, but it's always wrong and it's just stuck in my head that way. The Microsoft Attestation or Azure Attestation Service. So if you're running on Azure, it is kind of the open enclave version of this, but you should be able to take advantage of it. So what I'm speaking for Bruno, but his original objective was to be able to have one abstraction that supported plug and play for any one of those 3. That feels like a lot of work and it's going to take a long time. So I think there's 2 parts of this. One is what is the fastest way we can get DCAP support for the 2 projects? It does not have to be the easiest to use. It just has to be something that we can use. And then the second step is what's the right abstraction for doing it. So those are the 2. I'm rambling, but I'm trying to throw out the
I know.
the problem.
If I have to make a comment, in my guess, this is a complete guess. Okay, the fastest is going to be MAA, because it's just replacing the ITA call to an MAA call, which is, of course, it has its limitations. It can only work in Azure, but yeah. And
So
see so the challenge with implementing our own DCAP inside CCF is that we'll have to keep periodically provisioning our ledger with the up-to-date caches, right? So the certificates and all those things, revocation details and all those. The question is like, how does the ledger get it? So we have to make an assumption that there is an oracle who will do it on our behalf, or like on.
Well, I think we don't need an oracle. I mean, what we need is some API that we can invoke on it. So let me ask a different question, a different version of this question. Okay, and Marcus, you're not going to like this discussion because of its connection to FPC, but I'm just going to ask it for simplicity's sake. How hard would it be to lift out the attestation code from CCF and just incorporate it into the verification process that we have, so that the only thing we have to do is generate the quote and we just let CCF, the existing library support and CCF support it? So how is CCF currently doing attestation?
Yeah, they are relying on MAA.
That's what I'm saying. So one option here is we just don't do the verification code, and we just
Yeah.
make
Just like
the
how
ledger
we,
just
yeah,
call the existing MAA.
yeah, just like how we today use CCS or native crypto functionality for all our crypto calls. We assume that CCF somehow exposes the attestation APIs that they,
The
yes,
verification.
exactly,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
just the verification parts of it that we need.
Yeah, so we have to check if it's available for us to use, but even if it's not available, we can always use in our application.
Yeah, well, and this is absolutely something we could go back to the CCF team and ask for.
Yes.
So, Bruno, Marcus, thoughts on that? Marcus, this is where you're supposed to come back and say, but wait, that doesn't help me, and it might not.
Well, first of all, I don't think that I understand how CCF does this verification of the attestation. But what I heard from Prakash is that it basically is the Azure version of the attestation, which, I mean, I don't know how compatible all this stuff is, but this, if that's the case, then this sounds like it could be somewhat compatible with the Open Enclave attestation thing.
Yep.
That would be, I
would
think, then
guess it's the same.
fine.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, I mean, let's say, okay, this is a great idea. Cool. We basically can get rid of a lot of code and just be the consumer of some verification component of somewhere. Practical speaking, I mean, we have this little component in FPC called the Enclave Registry, which is a chain code, receives an attestation, then verifies the attestation, currently with the help of Intel with Epit. And then if we got green light, we're basically registering our enclave on the ledger and saying, okay, look, this is a public key, it has a valid attestation, all great. And then I would basically wondering, okay, so what are the steps in order to integrate the CCF attestation verification package functionality into our enclave registry chain code? Which I don't know if that can be answered here right now, but I think those are the steps we would need to do. However, if this solves basically the problem that we currently don't have, let's say, a streamlined attestation both for the C++ and the Go version of FPC, then this would be great. One other idea, or one other thought I have around, I mean, the question, I mean, when you ask the question, okay, what would be the preferred way of attestation tooling? I mean, the simple SGX SDK based pure DCAP implementation, or the Intel service or the Azure service. So there, I mean, I don't have a strong opinion there. However, what we actually have is in FPC, we have a little tutorial contributed by some guy from, I believe, Hitachi, who was basically trying to run FPC on the Azure cloud. And he basically produced a step-by-step tutorial how to deploy an FPC chain code application on Azure Confidential Computing. But back then, if I remember correctly, they still had Epit support also on those boxes available. Not sure if this is still the case. So maybe our little tutorial does not even work anymore. But yeah, so I mean, in order to basically claim, hey, FPC works smoothly on Azure Confidential Computing Cloud, it would be just natural to also consume the Azure attestation service in that deployment, right?
Yep.
Bruno, do you have any thoughts on that or remember anything we discussed in the past on that topic?
Well, not really. So what I want to say is that basically the enclave registry that we have in FPC is essentially very similar to the PDO transaction processor. So the same challenges that we have in one, we encounter those in the other. Using MAA would be great, and I agree with Prakash that it would be easy, simply because the verification flow would be very similar to what we do with EPID today. There is the usual problem that you must run an Azure VM to use that. It's not a public service, so that's the issue.
So it basically means that if we want to do hardware support, it will have to be on Azure.
Yes.
Right.
So,
which is a pretty significant limitation, because it means you can't really do deep development locally.
Yeah, precisely.
Unless you're doing it in simulation mode.
Now, implementing something with the SDK libraries, well, I don't know how complicated that is. The thing is that, okay, I talked with many of you in separate occasions that basically we need the verification code in the transaction processor or on the chain code, and we have to pass all the collateral from the outside and verify everything in there. So I'm not sure how easy it is to pass that collateral. So the basically the information about the TCB that you get from the caching service, and I don't know if you will get run into freshness issues for that collateral. That's something that has to be investigated.
Okay, so I'm going to put a complete nix on the freshness question, because there is no such thing as enclave to enclave attestation verification with freshness. Everything is a hack in order to make it work. So let's not worry at all about freshness for enclave to enclave or for in enclave verification.
Yeah, no, what is not a hack is that by using a verification service, the problem is simplified to a large extent, let's say.
I agree and I don't agree, right? Let's just pull all discussion of timeliness and freshness completely out of this conversation, because I don't believe it. First off, I have not seen code that anyone is running that does wall clock time for freshness verification for enclave to enclave attestations, because you can't trust the clock.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are clever ways of doing it. There are hacky ways of doing it, but none of them are perfect. So let's just pull the whole question of freshness out right now. So what we need is to be able to do just the verification, ignoring the timestamps.
Yeah, which means porting the DCAP code to, well, in our case, to CCF, because PDO is using that. And in the FPC case, it should run on the as a chain code.
Okay, and why do you use the word port, given that there are available? I mean, okay, so the question Michael and I were having, so there's available Ubuntu libraries that you can install that take care of this, right? That we're just invoking the the operations in order to do it. And yes, I know there's all the caching service and all the rest of the crap that has to be in there. I totally get all that. But at least there are pre-built Debian packages to add DCAP verification, at least for Ubuntu 20.04, and Michael says that it works up to 24.04.
Yeah,
So
but I believe that those work if
isn't really just writing the code to invoke those. I mean, when you say port, what do you mean by port? It should just be a port of the code to invoke the existing APIs, not to rewrite the APIs.
No, ideally you don't have to rewrite the APIs. The thing is that Fabric and CCF have a well-defined interface, and you cannot simply port unmodified code. Well, it depends on the dependencies that code has. Because
we're already using the SGX SDK code in order to unpack the quote that we send across right now for verification for EPID. Why is that?
Yeah, but that is that in an untrusted environment where you have a less restricted, actually it's not restricted at all, API. Instead on CCF and Fabric, you are developing on a more restrictive environment with respect to the available APIs.
Okay, so let's back up for a second. CCF is not in an untrusted, it's not running untrusted, it's running inside an enclave.
Right.
Doing the verification pieces, if it's not untrusted. So how is it different?
Well, the fact that it's trusted, it means that it has a well-defined interface or API below to build on, which may not allow for unmodified POSIX applications or whatever that is. So it depends what kind of dependencies this DCAP library has.
Okay, so I think there's some work to be done to understand what the existing DCAP libraries support.
Yeah. Now, there is one that runs inside an enclave.
But that is code that runs, as far as I can tell, that's code that runs inside the enclave and can be invoked from inside the enclave.
Yes, so that makes me hopeful that it could be easy, but I have not checked the code.
Okay. And I don't know what, I mean, I was looking through the APIs for it. It looks pretty straightforward. Well, okay, subject to anything that's straightforward, given that you got to go through the caching service to do it. Okay, but keeping that in mind, it doesn't look that hard to make the conversion to it. So, but that's me from the outside, not having ever done it. So you are much more aware of it. But I do think starting with the existing APIs and going from there seems like a much better way.
Yeah, I think so. It's something we can look at. Just for the records, I would like to leave one final, very simple way to do this, which is we do our own verification agent. It will start, attest itself, and that will be our, while creating its own key material when it starts up, that will be the our root of trust that we can inject in the enclave registry in FPC or the PDO transaction processor. And after that, we can basically invoke it for verification whenever we want. So that would be our verification agent, which will spit out the verification report that we can send to our favorite, on our favorite ledger. And I say verification agent and not service, so that I think this can be maintained compatible with ATA as well.
Okay, so if we're gonna do that, I would like to see a design. Because I'm not sure I understand completely. You're using terms in weird ways that I like. I would not use the word port for what you described. So there's some disconnect here. I'd like to see something just sketched up for what it looks like.
So do I understand Bruno's proposal correctly? So that this verification agent is also an enclave?
It's something external. If it's an enclave or not, it's up to you to determine. And maybe Decap also has code to run this verification agent separately.
Okay, so Marcus, here's okay, there are a bunch of ways that we could do this, but let's just postulate for a moment that what you're doing is putting together something that runs inside an enclave. It takes in it's basically a service running the API that you want for doing verification, and it generates some kind of a token coming out. And our code, whether it's from the ledger or from the contracts, trusts the key for that agent.
Yeah.
Right. It's basically saying, hey, look, we're going to delegate to another enclave the ability to do the verification of this. And that's I think it's an interesting idea. And honestly, Bruno, we've talked about just running that verification inside a PDO contract on behalf of some others, right? Which has problems of bootstrapping it. And, that's the reason why we've never actually done it formally. But it does have some very interesting ideas in it. I would, however, like to see, like I said, something at the next level of detail. The idea sounds really good, but I'd like to see the next level of detail.
Just a quick comment on if you're going to use like another coexisting enclave in addition to the ledger enclave. How about something like a Marble Run enclave itself? I know that's not the intended use, but because in theory they're supposed to have like everything inside the enclave for attestation verification.
To the extent we can beg, borrow, and use code and the licensing all works out correctly, I'm fine with that, but I don't want to have a dependency on a proprietary service anymore, whether it's Marble Run or ITA.
Is it proprietary? I didn't know that. Oh, I thought it was open source.
Well, that's the part that I don't know. I know like the Ego stuff is available, but I don't know what's available for.
Okay, yeah, okay, thanks.
Well, I believe from the FPC side, spawning yet another enclave makes the FPC enclave registry more complicated. But
it would be external to FPC or to PDO. This would be a separate agent.
So Bruno, does this mean that essentially what we then do is, just roughly the following flow: we create the FPC enclave. The client basically calls this init enclave thingy. The enclave is created. It creates its attestation, sends it back to the client, or let's call it admin. The admin then contacts this whatever external service, gets all the attestation verified, gets a nice little statement with a signature, and this we send then to ERCC, our enclave registry, and the enclave registry just verifies that, hey, this looks like a proper attestation signed by an identity which I trust.
Yes.
Okay, so then if you do it like that, then this is exactly how we do it at the moment in FPC. Just that we basically we replace the current Epid Intel verification key with the verification key of that service, which we have to basically define when we set up the ledger or ERCC essentially.
So
which is fine.
So one thing we got to be careful of here, though, is you are the threat surface gets a whole lot bigger if you're offloading the verification piece to an enclave that runs on the host, that runs where the enclave services are running. The advantage of doing the verification on the ledger through the ledger is that the only thing you got to trust is the ledger, which is in theory more tightly maintained.
Yes, and with the agent, there is also a bootstrapping issue, because how do you verify the initial attestation of the verification agent?
So
we have a chicken and
an
egg
architecture
problem.
that moves the
Yay.
verification.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So my point, Bruno, is still the same, that I'd like to see the next level of detail so that we can actually do these kind of analysis.
So I would just add that. So I don't think we need to go into the bootstrapping problem, because we can just say this is our like open source solution. Trust on that box is out of band. If you don't like that box, go and subscribe to ITA.
Well, we're already doing some of that with the dependencies on CCF and the ledger pieces of
exactly right. So
we gotta be a
it's not
little
new.
bit careful about going too crazy on it. But this is why I'm saying if the verification agent runs concurrently with the enclave service, we do not necessarily trust the enclave service. So I don't know why I would trust the verification service running on the same host that the enclave service is running.
Yeah.
I would feel a whole lot better if that verification service was running on the ledger where it's much more maintained.
Yes, that is true, but except that our ledger is in theory supposed to be decentralized. So what is the assumption on the deployment of the verification service?
Because in theory we can incorporate the verification service into the BFT protocol if we needed to.
Okay, so essentially you're saying that then there is no separate enclave, it's all part of the ledger code itself.
Well, there could be a separate enclave, and that's perfectly fine, but you need multiple. If we care at that level, then you need multiple instances of it. I mean, the point of the ledger is it's decentralized, but it's not decentralized purely for trust. Right? It's decentralized for availability and consistency as much as anything.
Yeah.
We're treating the ledger as a managed service with a different level of trust than we're treating the enclave services, because the enclave services can run on-prem, which means that the attacker has much better access to them.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is I want to see the next level. We can have the discussions about the trade-offs on the different approaches.
But so this agent service, I mean, this is not so far away from the single abstraction for the services, right?
Correct.
Because I mean, yeah, we will come up with a nice little API which works fine for us. But then, I mean, we could build it in a way that, yeah, you can spawn an enclave somewhere. This is one implementation, either on the same host or on the ledger or wherever. Or you can basically have I don't know, an adapter to MAA or ITA.
Yeah,
I think that's the strength
yeah.
of what Bruno's proposing here, is we're backdooring what he wanted to do in the first place.
In fact, if that's the thing, we don't even have to bother about abstraction, right? We can just borrow existing APIs from either MA or ITA if we have to be forward compatible later.
Okay. Well, that was fun. And I'll save my other comments for more private forums.
But is there also a low-hanging fruit? I mean, a quick and dirty decap support to just do a tick off of the we can do decap in parallel to Epit? Because I mean, right now I understand that we would like. I mean, ideally we have a nice solution which gives us plenty opportunities to extend it with ITA and MMA and whatever. Should work nicely with simulation mode when you run this locally, but then eventually it should run on Azure and wherever you want. But again, I mean, this here in the notes, this sounds like lots of work, but to just have decap available, I don't know, in 2 weeks, is there also a quick and dirty path? Even if it's not nice, but quick and dirty?
If it's 2 weeks, if it is PDO, I think the best option is to see if we can borrow, if we can just like make a can we grab the code from CCF? If that is doable, that is the easiest.
Well, but is this compatible with the current Epit attestation in a way that you could still have the option to use the current Epit thing plus decap?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I was asking if we, I mean, do what Prakash just suggested to, I mean, do the MMA way of decap. Is this something which we can basically add in addition to the existing attestation code, that you basically can have a little config or a switch somewhere where you then switch between our current Epit flow versus MMA attestation?
Or if you're talking about
MMA based decap.
if you're talking specifically about PDO, yes, right? We can always retain the current Epit checker inside PDO, except that the difference would be that the eService, when it tries to register the enclave, it directly submits the code to the ledger and not to IAS. So there will have to be some changes to the tooling used by the eService to process attestation codes. That makes sense.
I think Marcus is talking about having the same thing as we have for Epit, but applied to MAA. And yeah, I mean, using MAA or ITA would be probably the easiest things to do right now. In fact, I have the code for ITA, and the main problems were to, well, essentially implement or port whatever the JWT libraries for the tokens. So
yeah, but
getting that to run,
yeah,
getting that to run inside the enclave is a bit of a problem. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you've got it working, and I think there's, I'll talk to you separately about how to actually get that working. Maybe as an explicit call.
So I have a quick question there. So if that code is already available, what stops us from publishing that as a PR? I know that it requires ITA subscription, but so what? At least we have an implementation.
Well,
Well,
because
yeah.
it's not hooked into anything yet. There's a library that does the verification, but we have no code to the PDO code to do it. So it's not just a drop it in and call it done. There's a heck of a lot of work to be done still. It's a good starting point for it. And I think, Bruno, we have to figure out what it means for someone to actually get, how do you get a testable subscription to ITA? which you have not been able to figure out the answer to. Otherwise, it's useless code.
No. Yeah.
I don't want to port it just so we have the checkbox, but nobody can actually do anything with that. That kind of defeats the point. It's no better than having no support, is the point.
Yeah, at this
Right,
point, yes.
also true.
No, I wouldn't say that. It is open source code that shows how to use a paid subscription.
But we
Where
have
do
no,
I have to enter my credit card details?
yeah, we have no ability to test it. We have no ability to actually go see if it works.
Yeah, okay, no, I understand you.
I gotta pay before I actually use PDO. Is that what you're saying? That doesn't seem like a very good idea.
No, I understand. No, I understand. It's not ideal. I was just saying that I'm not saying we should stop there, but given that that work has already been done and it's a proof of concept, we can just publish it as a proof of concept and say that more open source, not non-paid versions are like on the way or something.
Are they?
I mean, something like what Mick is writing here, right? Like to rely on MA, but again, that has a restriction that it has to be in Azure. So like everything will have some restriction or the other. Or if you have like another enclave, you'll have the bootstrapping problem. So it's like every solution has its own challenges.
Well, more or less, because so right now it wouldn't be a problem because it supports EBIT as well, and so at least one part of that is testable. But at the beginning, at the end of the month, the development environment should go away, and so yeah, you will just remain with the paid option. But there is open source code related to DCAP that is not integrated. So I guess probably that part must be done one way or the other.
By the way, do you have any ability, when I go to the customer portal for ITA, it gives me a failure because the internals credentials are not valid and you can't actually log out and use something else?
You're asking if I can log in?
I'm asking you if you can actually get information through the customer portal. I can't.
You mean as an employee or as
Because
an
I'm
outsider?
okay, I will say that it's probably because their API for doing this is kind of crazy. So. Okay, that's a different issue, but I cannot, I mean, I have tried multiple times to go through their customer portal and I cannot get it to work. So as an internal Intel employee, what I have not tried is to get it using my own laptop. So
okay.
All right, should we maybe pause DCAP and go to the next 4 bullet points of the agenda in the last 11 minutes? I have a hard stop today.
Yes, thank you, Marcus. Yes.
okay,
hello.
the
So
hello world, I can do
yeah.
the hello world basically. So, you know, again, Marcus, this is your fault. But I've been trying to go back and basically simplify everything down. Okay, so we have 2 different audiences for the PDO contracts repository. One audience is for people who want to use the contracts. That documentation needs to be focused, but I think all the core components are there for it. The other is, how does somebody go about actually writing a new contract? And the Hello World is basically a step-by-step, it is a template that can be used and dropped. Basically copy the directory and then follow the instructions in order to make the modifications necessary to create your own contracts. So the approach that I'm taking is a README with a bunch of pointers and heavily commented files. But basically, I think it's down to the point where you could create an entirely new contract family by modifying like 3 files. So
That's cool.
fully
If,
down to that.
if you want to, I mean, me trying it out, just I would say send me a ping on Discord once you think it's ready.
Okay.
With a link, and then I click on it and start from there and be super stupid and just try my best. And
Okay.
then I can report back on how it's going.
Okay, that would be great. Mostly what I'm doing, I think the recoding is done. Most of what I'm doing right now is just writing markdown documentation for it. So I will let you know as soon as I mean, it's a few hours of focused work to get it done, which, as Prakash and Bruno know, finding few hours of time to focus is not
Great.
the easiest thing in
I
the
mean,
world.
just
So,
ping me whenever you feel ready, and
okay.
then I can take a look.
Okay, and it's I think, Marcus, we're days from doing that, so I'll have that as soon as I can for it.
That's fine. I mean, if you send me in 2 weeks a message, I will hopefully remember that I offered this.
I will hold you accountable to it. You do know that I might have to like get on an airplane and come sit next to you and watch you while you do this, but you know, okay, that you know, that would just justify a trip to Zurich. So, which
That
you know,
would be
I
great.
don't have to require a lot of prompting to do that. So
yeah, let me know when you're here. I will register you as a guest and share my office. We can sit together here. And, you watch me over the shoulders how I try to do Hello World with PDO.
That would be perfect. Okay, great. Okay, so the identity contract, a lot of that is still in progress. There's a dev branch for it out there. I don't think I'm ready for the full-on walkthrough yet, but at least the status, it's making progress. We do have the ability to do policies. I'm doing verifiable credentials instead of tokens. Bruno doesn't like me for that. We probably can talk about tokens as one externalization of it. But the idea would be that you can, for example, hand it a collection of evidence about an attestation of an enclave, and it should be able to send you back a verifiable credential about the status of that enclave based on the policies encoded inside the contracts. So I think this is it is a generalization of things we have learned for doing computations with MedPerf and some of the others as well. So that's all on that.
For the Hugging Face, yes, I think the AR is to essentially improve the documentation, not changing anything. There's nothing to change in the code, but yeah, I am working on the documentation with some pictures. There are no pictures today. So once the documentation is ready, I think I'll just convert it to a regular PR. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And the other one we really need to discuss, MedPerf. Yeah, so I checked the documentation. There's some documentation, but it needs substantially up-leveled documentation. Start with, and the code also needs quite a bit of cleanup. So that's going to take a while, I think. that's going to likely remain as a dev branch for now.
Okay, and
Yeah.
is it in a good enough shape for Hassan to work with yet?
But yes, that is true. That
Okay,
is
and
true,
should we invite him to participate in these calls?
We should. I'll definitely forward him. I will talk to him. I will at least send an email to him today with the details about the PDO slides and what we're doing on that. And anyway, just letting him know of these calls.
Okay, good.
Yes.
And then the other thing I was going to suggest is, what about when you in the Georgia or Notre Dame groups that are doing some of this? It'd be
Yeah.
nice to get them engaged here if we
Yes,
can.
that is true. I can send them again. I would have sent them at least once or twice, but yeah, let's see. Okay. Yeah, I would have. Yeah, let's at least get Benny if he wants to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else for today? Let me close.
Any questions?
No.
Nothing from my side.
All right.
Thanks for this great
Okay.
discussion.
Thank
Okay,
you all.
thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.